Okay, so we'll get started. I'm playing music. Let me know if you can hear it. I'm going to try to play it a little louder than last time because most people couldn't hear it in the past. I don't want to play it too loud, but in any case, we'll get started. So as I mentioned, you might want to have a couple blocks or something similar in shape, like a big book. If you don't have anything handy like that, you could use a chair. If you need to, you think you might need to put your hands on something, it's always fine to have a chair handy. It can be used just for balance sometimes, or just in lieu of a block. And like it's a nice high surface, like a block. You can also, have a thick blanket or a firm cushion, like from your couch or something. That might be nice too. I highly recommend investing in an official yoga bolster. It's a firm, long cushion like this, and you will find many uses for it if you get one. So we're going to get started. I'm going to have you guys start in a constructive rest position, and then I'll talk a little bit about what we'll be doing today. So constructive rest is very nice and simple. You're going to lie down on your back. If you do have that cushion handy, you can use it for constructive rest, but it's not necessary at all. I'll show using my bolster. You'll have your knees bent. Just come to lie down. And then separate the feet wide apart, have the knees falling together. And then, if you have that cushion there, it's just a little extra support, just feels a little comfy, but you could absolutely do this without anything there. And it would just look like this. So the idea of constructive rest is to have the legs resting against each other so they feel held in place with little effort or no effort. Feel free to adjust the feet further away or closer in for you to find that effortless feel. It's going to be a little bit different for everybody. So go ahead and do that. And once you are in a comfortable place, just bring the arms down to the floor either side of you, turning the palms up. And just rest in this position for the first few moments, starting to bring your awareness to your breath. What we're going to be working on a little bit today is actually something that we are always doing when we practice yoga, but I've been thinking about it a little more explicitly, so I want to introduce some ideas to you. You've probably heard some of them before, especially if you've taken classes from me before, but it's a common theme in yoga, an idea, which is that when we're practicing our asana, we're trying to sort of break down our patterns, our habits, whether it's physical habits leading to tightness in certain parts of the body, or our behavioral patterns, our habits of thought, our ways of thinking about ourselves. So today in class, we're going to be working with holding poses a little bit longer than usual. And when we do that, sometimes we reach a point where we hit a little resistance, where we start to feel a little bit, I don't want to do this anymore. I've experienced getting mad at teachers, so if you get mad at me, it's normal. Like, why is she making us do this? You might also feel, other things. You might feel like just, out of sorts or panicky or anything, whatever reaction you have is fine. The whole idea, though, is to sit with that and observe it without judgment and try to break it down a little bit. Because once we can untangle, maybe you think of it more like a knot that you're trying to untangle. Once we start to untangle, or maybe you think of it as like a blockage, and once you clear the blockage, other things can start to happen. Other things might well up or rise up in your body and your mind. They might not be pleasant, those feelings, those emotions, thoughts. You might have negative thoughts. You might have anger. You might have guilt. You might have, all these things starting to come up. You might be upset because there's feelings that you've been holding back. Somehow they get released when we do asana. All of this is totally normal. So we'll be holding some of our poses. We'll be doing movement as well, though, because I know we do need that as well to start to release. And then towards the end of class, we'll be doing poses that are specifically about release, as well as trying to process some of the things that have come up in yoga. So in our practice. So as I mentioned, these are things that we are always doing in yoga. And that's why we should do a full yoga practice at least once in a while, instead of just, doing a pose here, pose there, which is fine if you, want to do that. But having that arc, that whole practice that's designed for these purposes of trying to process what's going on, especially ending with a long shavasana. So I'm going to give you a long shavasana today for sure. Okay, so what we're going to start with after your constructive rest is just a couple seated poses or positions. I'm not even going to call them poses. And you'll see, I'll explain more as we go. So take a couple more slow breaths in your constructive rest. And then we will slowly start to come out of your constructive rest. When you're ready, hug your knees in towards your chest. Stay there for a couple moments and then slowly roll over onto one side and come up to sit. I'll give you a couple moments to find a comfortable seated position. You can sit any way you like. I prefer to sit in Virasana on a block, so I have a block between my heels, knees together, feet apart, and I sit back on the block. You could also sit cross-legged. If you need to sit in a chair or any other way, go ahead and do that. The important thing is that you're sitting in a way that allows you to sit up nice and tall without any rounding in the lower back or tightness in the hips. So that might mean sitting up on something. Once you're seated in a comfortable position, our first hold for a few breaths is going to be stretching the arms straight out to the sides, palms down. So go ahead and stretch your arms out to the side and then shrug the shoulders up. So the arms go up, but because the shoulders are going up, you're not really trying to lift your arms by themselves. Shrug them up and then exhale, release the shoulders as far down as you can. We're going to hold the arms out, start to reach out, and we're going to stay like this for 10 to 12 breaths. Now, when I'm going to give you these holds in different poses, I will talk about breaths, how many breaths, but I'm going to give a range, usually because we all breathe at a different rate. You should try to always keep the breath slow. Okay, not a quick shallow breath to get through the number. So you're going to try to keep the breath slow and start to notice what happens as we hold. So in this position, really, really reaching through the arms, spreading wide, you might start to feel tingling. You might start to feel fatigue in the arms or hands, anywhere. Really spread the fingers apart, so each finger's stretching and reaching. Maybe a couple more breaths. Try to resist the urge to shrug the shoulders up again to relieve any strain. And then slowly, slowly, slowly on your next inhalation, roll the palms up, look up a little bit, just have a little tiny bit of a cow spine in the upper spine. And then on your exhale, bring the hands slowly together, lightly touching into Namaskarasana. Making sure you're not closing off the top of the chest when you bring the hands together. So keeping the top of the chest nice and open. And then letting the hands rest against each other without pressing, almost like a constructive rest feeling in your hands, just like the legs were resting against each other. The hands in this position can kind of rest against each other. So they press because the weight of the arm is pressing into the hand, not because you're actively pressing the hands themselves. And then one more breath. And then on your exhalation this time, let the hands rest down on your lap. Close your eyes and note for a few breaths what changed in your arms, shoulders, upper body after that practice of holding the arms out. From here, we're going to move right away into a cow-cat. So I always like to pad a little bit extra under the knees. You can always do that if you have a blanket handy, if it's a little sensitive on the knees. I'm going to be angling a little bit off to the side instead of facing straight onto the camera. I'm going to mirror what you're doing, but I'm going to be slightly off-center so you can see what I'm doing when I'm, stepping back or reaching the legs back. So first, come to your tabletop, shoulders over wrists, knees should be apart so that the hips can be right over the knees. Start with an inhalation for your cow, looking up, and then exhale for your cat. We'll continue moving. We're going to make our cow and cat a little fluid today, a little more fluid. So each time you're going into the shape, whichever one it is, think of going back a little bit and then scooping forward to your cow. And then on your exhale, go back a little bit and scoop the opposite way for your cat. So it's a little bit of a back and forth between each movement. Inhale for cow, exhale for cat. Continuing a few more times on your own. Inhale and exhale. Try to keep the breath flowing through the nose, in and out. However, if you're congested or something, of course, it's always okay to breathe through the mouth if you need to. Continue a couple more times in your cow and cat. And then make sure your feet are pointed. After a cat spine, go on back to child's pose, reaching those arms out in front. And take a few breaths there. So just a couple comments about the breath when we're doing these holds. Hold might be a slight bit of a misnomer for these poses because it's not like you're frozen into position. You're not a statue. We're breathing, we're alive. There's always going to be some movement in the body. Your blood is circulating, right? If you need to make little adjustments to hold a pose, that's fine. You might find yourself actually being able to move a little bit more deeply into a pose when you hold it a little bit longer. So all of these small micro movements are fine. You shouldn't feel like you have to be frozen or stuck. It might just be a very slight pulsation that you feel happening just because you're breathing. So don't feel like you have to be frozen. So from your child's pose, go ahead and come back up to your table. I'm just going to get rid of this for now. Yeah, we're going to be coming off the knees in a moment. So from here, from your tabletop, we're going to come into a forearm plank, but a little bit differently than sometimes we do. So from here, you're going to bend your elbows and start to move back, planting the forearms down. So the elbows and knees are kind of close to each other. I'm going to try to do a little bit of a cow and cat here, just to feel what that feels like in a slightly more compressed position. You might not get that much movement, but go ahead and try a couple times. And then stop with your shoulders directly over the elbows. Stretch one leg back and the other leg back to come to your forearm plank. And we're going to hold our forearm plank for 5 to 6 breaths. So you're going to try to keep your body in a straight line. Each inhale, try to lengthen from the crown of the head through the heels. Each exhale, cinch a little bit more around the core. Inhaling and exhaling. Trying to keep the breath slow. You get up to around 5 or 6. Keep that core as you slowly lower down onto the belly and flip the toes so you're on the tops of your feet, ending up in your Sphinx pose. Take a couple breaths, looking forward in your Sphinx, thinking still of that engagement for the core to support the lower back. If this feels like too much of a back bend in your lower back, you can always separate the elbows a little bit so you're a little bit lower down in your Sphinx. That's always an option if this is a little too intense in the lower back. From here, make sure you have room in front of you to move your arms around a little bit. We're going to go through a little sequence from Sphinx to Cobra to Locust and back again. And then at the end, we're going to hold Locust a little bit. So each time you're lifting up into this shape, you're going to inhale. And each time you exhale, think of lengthening forward so the heart comes a little more forward as you exhale each time. Then we'll change hand positions in between. You're not ever going to come completely down onto the floor. So you're going to try to keep the upper chest and head off the floor. So from here, legs are parallel, toes are pointed, tops of the feet pressing into the floor. Make sure the toes are going straight back. In other words, the middle of the top of the foot should be touching the floor, not just the inside close to the big toe. So we're not turning the legs out. Inhale, look forward in your Sphinx. And then exhale, drag the hands back just on the fingertips, reaching the heart forward. Hands come next to your lower rib cage. And then inhale up to Cobra, any height. Exhale, release. Straighten the arms back alongside you. And then inhale, Locust, legs also lifting up off the floor. Stay up as you exhale, reaching the arms forward, palms down, and then inhale, slide the arms back to Sphinx. Okay, so we're going to go through the whole thing again. At the end, we're going to hold Locust for a few breaths. We're going to do some movement in our Locust, though, so it's not like a very static hold. So inhale to your Sphinx. Keep the legs engaged for Sphinx and Locust, Sphinx and Cobra, like you're pressing down actively, right? Inhale, and then exhale. Reach the heart forward, drag the hands back. Inhale up, Cobra. Exhale, reach the heart forward, reach the arms back. And inhale up, for locust. Exhale, reach the arms forward, palms down. But we're going to stay up, right? You're going to inhale, reach back, lift up a little higher. Let's try to stay up that high as you exhale the hands forward again. That's our movement. 5 or 6 breaths. Inhale back, stay up. Exhale, forward. Stay up. Inhale, reach back, stay up, or lift up even more. Exhale, forward. So hypothetically, you're getting higher up on each repetition. Let's do maybe one more. Exhale, forward. Inhale, lift up. And then you can stay up with your arms back, maybe one more breath. And then slowly with control, lower down, elbows out, palms down, rest your head on your folded hands. So you'll notice, I'm not telling you exactly when to come down. It's always up to you when to come down or release out of a pose. I'm suggesting how long to stay. If you feel the need because of a physical pain of some kind that you're having to release out of a pose, of course you should. If that happens, try to come out gradually and thoughtfully instead of just plopping or flopping out of the pose. So we're always careful in how we get into a pose. We should also be careful in how we come out of the pose. Trying to do it with some element of grace. So from here, after you've rested for a few breaths, we're going to come back up. Bring your hands under your shoulders and push yourself up to table. And then tucking the toes this time, we're going to go back to child's pose. You're stretching out the bottoms of the feet a little bit. Then flip the feet. We're going to come up to a puppy pose. I'll make it a little bit differently than I've done with you guys before. We're going to reach the arms. We're going to come to it from tabletop. So usually we come to it walking the hands forward. This time we're going to walk the knees back until we reach puppy pose. If you're not familiar with puppy pose, I'm going to demonstrate. What we want to happen is find that spot where the upper body is lining up with the arms. Okay, so the knees walk back, the knees stay down, and then you find, where do you think you might have that line? Your upper body in line with the arms, lengthening the spine in a neutral position. There are different ways to do puppy. Some people do it with an arch or a spinal extension. We're just coming to a long, neutral spine. So it's the same as you might have in a downward facing dog. Staying in your puppy for a moment. Now, tuck the toes again. We're going to come up into downward facing dog from puppy. Okay? A little bit differently than sometimes we do it. So you're going to come into that position, upper body in line with the arms, tuck the toes underneath, and try to straighten the legs without losing that alignment of the upper body and the arms. So that's just our first downward facing dog. We're going to hold downward facing dog, but next time we do it. Okay, so drop the knees and come forward again to tabletop. Next, we're going to do our high plank. So if you need to, you can go back to child's pose and maybe flip the palms up for a moment. Maybe you did a little, maybe you need a little wrist release. You can lift the fingers up like so for a moment. And then we're going to come to a high plank and we're going to hold it again. I know you're starting to not like me, I'm sorry. You're going to have your shoulders over your wrists, one leg back, other leg back, straight position from the top of the head through the heels. Just like a forearm plank, you're trying to lengthen as you inhale, and then exhale, cinch the core. Try to hold it 5 to 6 breaths. If you need something to do, some movement, Just try to rock a little bit forward on your toes and back. Inhaling, exhaling. I think we're almost there already. And then from here, if you need to put your knees down and take a child's pose, you can. Otherwise, you're going to try to push the hips up and back from this position to your downward facing dog. And then we will all meet in child's pose. So drop the knees and go back to your child's pose. So just playing with a couple different ways of getting in to our downward facing dog. I realize sometimes I've been doing something the same way for several classes in a row, so just need to mix it up a little bit. So next time we do our down dog, we're going to go straight from plank immediately into down dog. We'll be holding our down dog. For that hold, I'm not going to really give you a movement or a back and forth kind of idea. I'm just going to suggest a couple of cues that you can just work on repeatedly throughout your down dog to try to develop the pose as you hold it. So it won't be a big movement. There might be a subtle change in how it feels or how it looks, but I can't see you, so we'll just go by how it feels for you. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to come to our plank again. This is to measure the length and then go immediately to your down dog. Just going to stay maybe 6 breaths. Try to line up the head between the arms. Let the gaze fall to the middle of the mat so you're not looking back at your feet or your legs. Try to lengthen, lifting the sitting bones up behind you, letting the heels release down, and pressing the tops of the thighs back. Continue breathing nice and slowly through the nose. Thinking again those cues. Lifting the sitting bones up behind you, letting the heels release down and pressing the tops of the thighs back. When you've reached about 6 breaths, bend your knees slightly and start to walk the feet forward towards your hands. And also walk the hands back towards your feet. Feet are wide apart, knees are bent, and just come to your soft forward fold. Dangling out over your legs. For this one, you can hold opposite elbows if you want, or it might feel kind of nice to just let those arms go. Let them dangle down on the floor and just kind of flop around. Shaking out the head, yes and no. And then we'll start to come to stand up. Sit back even farther. Place your hands on your legs above the kneecaps, and then push yourself up to stand. Finally, we're up in our Tadasana. And we're actually going to hold Tadasana. So you bring the feet close together, have the heels a little bit apart, big toes touching on the inside, and bring your hands into Namaskarasana and close the eyes. And just take a few breaths. Again, maybe 5 to 6 breaths. Coming to try to feel from the inside out are the major bony structures of your body stacking up vertically in alignment. It's kind of hard to be aware of that sometimes, but just trying to feel, is the skull centered over the shoulder girdle? The shoulder girdle includes your collarbone, your shoulder blades, as well as the shoulders themselves. Is the rib cage centered over the pelvis? Everything lining up so that you can be in a vertical position with as little effort as possible. And then slowly lower the hands down and open your eyes. So the next thing we're going to do in Tadasana, we're going to still be standing in Tadasana. We're going to be doing an exercise with our hands. So sometimes in yoga, we do something called kriyas. If you're not familiar with kriyas, kriya means a purifying action. So it's some form of repetitive action or movement that you do for a little while. And even though it's movement, we sometimes have the same reaction to kriyas that we do when we hold a pose for a long time without moving or not moving much, which is we get those same maybe kinds of feelings coming up, like anger, resentment, just wanting to stop. And just like we do our holds, we're going to try to fight through or break through that resistance. Or if that image, you don't like that word or that image, you can think of, again, maybe a knot you're trying to untangle, or a ball of ice that you're going to melt. Anything that works for you. So this is the movement. I'm going to show you first. So don't start yet because we're actually going to time it. These are called finger flaps. Or I call them finger flaps. I don't really know. They probably have a name, but I call them finger flaps. Whoops. Boop. So I'm trying to back up enough so you can see my hands when they're raised, but you can't. So I'm going to do it with my hands here, and then you're supposed to do it with your arms reaching straight up. Okay? So imagine my arms are reaching straight up. My hands are facing forward, palms forward, and my fingers are just going to flap up and down. So the palm doesn't move. Okay? Maybe I should come even closer. So my hand stays here, and the fingers just flap up and down like this. The thumb doesn't really do anything. It just hangs out. It sticks out to the side. So it's going to look like this. Like you're waving bye-bye to someone, but just with the fingers. Okay? So we're going to do it for a minute. Now, try to stay in Tadasana when you're doing it. If you need to, if you're really starting to like lose it a little bit, it's okay to walk around towards the end. Since you can't see my hands, to make sure I'm really doing it, I'm going to do it kneeling down. I suggest you do it standing up because then you have the option to walk around. Okay, so let's get started and get it over with. So arms up, palms facing forward, and let's begin. So it feels like nothing at first. You feel like a little pat, pat. You hear a little pat, pat sound, like almost like you're snapping your fingers. I was leaving out a finger. And then before too long, you start to feel like it's a little harder to make this nice pat, pat sound. Starting to feel a little bit of fatigue, maybe starting in the hands, and then maybe in your forearms, starting to feel a little bit of fatigue. I already did this once today, so trust me, I know what you're going through. Just try to keep going. Try to make the flapping as quick as you can, even though it's hard to keep it quick. You want to kind of slow it down. Notice if one arm or one hand feels different than the other. If you're starting to have a tough time, really tough time, you can walk around a little bit and then slowly lower your hands down. And let's come back to Tadasana, but with the hands just dangling down by your sides. And then you can have a wonderful sense of gratitude that you're not having to do that anymore. Feeling the tingling, feeling the blood rushing back into the hands and into the arms. And just taking a few breaths. You can gently wiggle out, shake out the hands and arms. So, to move into some standing poses, you might want to have your blocks in front of you. Let's see, I'm going to start on this, going on this side. Okay, so again, I'm going to mirror, but I'm at a little bit of an angle. so you can see what we're going to do. Stand in Tadasana. You can have your blocks or props right in front of you. You might or might not need them. Inhale the arms out and up, reaching tall. And then exhale, fold forward, reaching for the floor or your blocks. Inhale, lift halfway up, reaching the spine forward, half forward fold. And exhale, fold again. Inhale, step the right foot back. And exhale, drop the right knee to the floor. Inhale up, crescent lunge. Think of lifting the torso straight up with the arms, as if someone's pulling your hands straight up towards the ceiling. And then maybe a little bit of an arch back, lifting the sternum up even more. Continue breathing. And then on an exhalation, bring the hands down either side of your front foot. Inhale, tuck the back toes and straighten the back leg. And exhale, shift the hips straight back, trying to straighten out the front leg. You have your hands on blocks if you need. Just try to straighten out the front leg. If it doesn't come all the way straight, that's okay. You're just working towards straightening it out. Inhale, reaching the spine forward. Maybe that makes you lift up a little bit, that's fine. And then on your exhale, lower down a little bit more towards that front leg. Inhale, and then bend the front knee. We're going to try to come up straight to a high lunge from here. The back leg is going to stay straight. You're still on the ball of your back foot. Heel is up, toes are facing forward. Push into that front leg and come right on up to your high lunge, everything facing forward. And then exhale, hands down to your hips. Straighten out the front leg. We're going to inhale when we straighten the legs, and then exhale, bend both knees. So this back knee is going to dip down towards the floor. Okay, so let's inhale up, exhale down. Inhale and exhale. One more time, inhale up, exhale down. Now we're going to stay down with this knee bent and straighten the back leg. You might have to push that leg further back to straighten it. Good, and then once again, come up. High lunge, it's like a crescent lunge, but with the back leg straight. And then exhale, hands down inside that front foot. Walk your hands around to your right side, making the feet parallel, and just fold forward in a straddle. Forward fold for a moment. Again, you can shake out the head, yes and no. Walk the hands back behind you. So you turn the hands so the palms are down, the thumbs will be going to the outside. And maybe crawl those fingertips a little bit more behind you. Any amount. Good. And now we're going to come to goddess pose. So with the hands still down, of course you can have your blocks if you would like. Turn the toes out 45 degrees to either side. And then double check as you bend your knees that the knees are tracking out over the feet, the same angle. If you have your feet too far apart, if you have a really wide straddle stance, then you need to move your feet closer together in order to do goddess pose, okay? Because you want to have the knees over the ankles when you bend your knees. So you might have to adjust a little bit. And then at first, you can stay down just pushing the knees apart a little bit with your forearms. So the goddess pose is opening up the hips quite a lot to either side. Using the arms to get them there is helpful, but then when we stand up, we don't have the arms there anymore. So now we have to contract back here to hold the knees apart, right? So you're going to try to come up, keeping the knees bent deeply, and also try to straighten the back. So the tendency is to arch the back in our goddess pose, the tailbone sticking out behind us. Try to tug enough to get the tailbone to be pointing straight down. And then hands in prayer. Guess what? We're going to hold 5 to 6 breaths. Each inhale, try to open the knees out more by contracting in the back. And exhale, try to lower down any amount more. Next inhalation, straighten everything up, reaching nice and tall, and then swivel to face towards the front of the mat, in front of your space. Again, hands down either side of that front foot, and step the back foot forward. Bend the knees, hands on your legs above the kneecap, and slowly stand all the way up. Good. From here, I'm going to go to the other side. So, I'm going to angle this way now. Stand in Tadasana. Inhale the arms out and up. And exhale, fold forward, reaching for the floor or your blocks. Inhale halfway up, touch the fronts of the shins, and exhale, fold again. Bend the knees as needed to step the left foot all the way back into a low lunge. Release that knee to the floor and inhale up to your crescent lunge on this side. Exhale, hands down, either side of the front foot. Tuck the back toes and straighten out that back leg. We're going to try to come up to our high lunge on this side. So remember, all 10 toes are facing forward. Back heel is up. Push into that front leg to come all the way up to your high lunge. And then exhale, hands to your hips. From here, we're going to try to do our dips again. Actually, straighten the front leg. Inhaling with both legs straight. Exhaling, bending both knees. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale, exhale. Last time, inhaling up. Whoop. Sometimes it's hard to keep balance. And then exhale, stay with the front knee bent and straighten that back leg. Maybe you have to push that foot further back. And finally, inhale, arms up again. And then exhale, hands down inside that front foot. Walk the hands around to your left. Swivel the feet to parallel, and now you're in your straddle on this side. Again, just letting everything dangle down, taking your forward fold for a moment, and then flip the hands, walking them back behind you. Thinking the top of the head reaching down towards the floor. Good. Then walk the hands forward again. Turn those 10 toes out, 45 degrees to either side, bending the knees and getting ready for goddess pose on this side. So, of course, we already did goddess pose. We have to do it again. So, on this side, once you get your legs set, knees over your ankles, knees tracking out over the feet, you're going to come up to your goddess pose. I'm going to show you. You can straighten the legs for a second. So I can show you. You're going to either do your Namastarasana, prayer hands again for our hold, or if you would prefer, you can try your cactus arms. So cactus arms are directly out from the shoulders, elbows 90 degrees, palms facing forward. So for variety, you can try cactus arms. Up to you. So coming into your goddess pose, again, trying to keep the back straight, which means tailbone has to point straight down. Usually it's a little bit of a feeling of tuck in the pelvis. And then arms in your chosen position. Again, inhale, think of back here, contracting to pull those knees apart. Exhale, lower down any amount. 5 or 6 breaths. Eyes are open or closed, up to you. Trying to keep it low. And then finally, inhale everything straight up. Exhale, swivel towards the front of your space once again. Hands on the floor, either side of your front foot. This time, let's set the front foot back to downward facing dog. And then from down dog, when you're ready, drop the knees and go back to your child's pose. Once again, for this child's pose, try turning the palms up and releasing the sitting bones back towards the heels, any amount more. When you're ready, walk the hands back and come up to sit. I'm going to come all the way down to sit, but I would really suggest sitting up on something, okay? Your folded blanket would be good here. Even if you normally don't sit on anything when you sit down on the floor, we're going to start to try to segue into our part of the class is more, again, about releasing as well as letting us process whatever might be welling up. So it's important to remember that processing in this sense in yoga is not about an intellectual process. It might be conscious, it might be something that you are aware of in your mind, but it's not an intellectual or maybe even a verbal process necessarily. It's different for everybody. It is a physical practice. Asana practice is something we do with our bodies. So it might be something that is really happening on that physical level. So we can be conscious of it, but we don't have to try to overanalyze it or intellectualize it. So we'll talk more about that during Shavasana. Well, when we're getting ready for Shavasana. But for now, just remember, you don't have to always be able to write an essay about this later. So sitting up on a little bit of something or a lot. If you want even more, you could take your blocks. Actually, this is a nice thing to do. If you have two blocks, you put them together like this to sit on, and then maybe put a blanket on top. So it's a nice platform. Like so. I'm going to try that today, actually. So the whole idea of sitting up, because we're going to do a forward fold, is to use this height under the seat to help us start to spill forward into the forward fold. Of course, if you hyperextend in the knee, you might need to put something under your knees to keep that from happening. Otherwise, you're going to sit up straight, just Paschimottanasana, just forward fold, help having this little bit of a help to the upper body spilling forward. So we're thinking of folding from the pelvis, the pelvis is folding over the tops of the legs. So let's inhale, arms all the way up, and then exhale. Start to reach forward and have that sense of I'm just letting everything spill forward over my legs. And take a few breaths there. Oh, my dog wanted to come in, but she decided to leave me alone, so she's not coming in today. So, yeah, I have a third block, so I'm going to put it under behind my knees so I don't hyperextend there. That feels much nicer. You could stick a blanket under there if you have that problem too. So with seated poses, it's not as effortful to hold as, say, goddess pose or something, but we can hold them longer than usual. And some of those same things might start to come up if we do. So I'm just going to give you just a couple extra breaths in your Paschimottanasana. Not a huge, long hold, but just a little bit more than usual. Continue breathing. Maybe 1 or 2 more breaths, and then slowly come up to sit. Now you might notice that different poses bring up different things, right? You might not mind holding a really difficult pose, like downward facing dog for 10 breaths. That might be fun for you. That might be, something that's not really difficult for you. Whereas sitting and folding forward might make you crazy. So we all have these differences. So that's why we, try different poses to see what happens, see what comes up. So from here, we're going to continue sitting on something. What I had before with these blocks was a little actually too high for what we're going to do. So it shouldn't be too much. Maybe just a blanket, or if it's really thick, you can probably sit all the way on the floor to do this. And make sure you have some space behind you, actually, because we're going to be going backwards. I'm actually going to do this sideways so you can see more what we're doing. First, we're just going to do a seated pigeon pose. Yeah, I'll go to an angle. Okay, seated pigeon. So you're going to bend in your right knee and let the knee fall out to the side. Left leg is straight, foot lightly flexed. Take your hands and scoop underneath the right shin. This foot is flexed as well. And just any amount, you're just going to be pulling that knee up, that shin up towards your chest. Okay, any amount. Of course, if you lean back, it feels like you're getting the leg up more. You're not going to get any closer to your chest. So if you lean back, it's fine, but just pull the leg in any amount more. If you stay up, then you can really judge how far you're pulling that leg in. So you can stay here, you can rock it back and forth a little bit. If you have it fairly close into you, you might be able to wrap your left arm rather, around the outer edge of the foot like so. Not necessary to do that, but if you want to try, you can try that. And then we're going to take that right leg and cross it over and put the foot down outside the left leg. We're going to go into our seated spinal twist. First thing is to sit up nice and tall. You can keep the bottom leg straight. Excuse me. This is what happens when I start to think about doing twists. You can keep the bottom leg straight, or you can bend in that bottom leg and tuck the foot around to the outside of the opposite hip. If you can do that and still be sitting straight up. It's not necessary to do that because you're still going to do the same twist. Hug in the top knee in either case, because that is going to help you sit up straight. Okay, you're not hugging in, you're not rounding over it. You're trying to use that leg to lift the spine straight up. And then the left arm wraps around that knee and you start to twist around to your right. Right hand comes to the floor behind you. You might prefer to cross this elbow over to the outside of the right knee and use that for leverage to twist any amount more. And then slowly release, facing forward again. And straighten out that left leg if you had it bent. We're going to return a little bit to this figure 4 shape. So what we'll do is start to lean back a little bit, bending the left knee. So it's pushing this ankle up. And go ahead and lean back this time. And then you're going to have your hands on the floor behind you. Elbows are a little bit soft at first. Fingers are turning forward. We're going to move the left foot to the center. So it's not out to the left side anymore. It's more centered this way with the midline of the body. And then we'll lift up to a reverse table with a figure 4. So your right knee is pointing out to the side. And maybe just a couple breaths there. And then lower back down. Straighten out that front leg. And then straighten out the right leg as well. Actually, let's do Navasana for just a couple breaths. So you're going to tilt the upper body back, keeping it long. You can either hold the legs or keep the knees bent without holding the legs, or straighten the legs. I could make it just unbearable and make you hold that for 10 breaths. I'm not going to do that. Next time. So from here, we'll do our other side for our twist. So now you'll hug in your left knee. Oh, actually, we're doing our seated pigeon first. So you're going to bring in that left foot, let the knee fall out to the side, scoop under the shin, keep both feet flexed, and then just try to pull this shin up towards the chest, as if you could put the center of the shin right up here onto the breastbone. Same way as before. Maybe you want to wiggle it back and forth a little bit, wrap the arm around, whichever position you like. Again, noticing if you're kind of avoiding the issue by leaning back. If you do lean back, it's fine. You just have to bring the leg more, bring it with you, so you're not just changing the position of your body without closing up the angle. One side is going to be maybe tighter than the other. That's normal. Good. Now we'll go to the twist. So now bring that foot across and plant it down outside your right leg. And the same way as before, the bottom leg can stay straight, or you can bend it and tuck it around. And I'm putting it underneath the blanket on that side. Just makes it just makes sense. And now, again, we're going to hug in the top knee first to make sure we're sitting up nice and straight and tall, so there's no crunching down in the spine. Then wrap the right arm around in front, left hand behind you, and start to twist around any amount. Same way as before, cross this arm over, and maybe that finds a little more twist for you. Slowly unwind. And then straighten out that bottom leg if you've bent it in. Put the hands behind you on the floor. Bend that right leg so you can start to walk the hands back a little bit. Bring the right foot to the center. Left ankle still on top of the right knee. And lift up to your figure four reverse table on this side. And then uncross. Bring the soles of the feet together and let the knees fall apart into Tadasana. So diamond shape between the legs. And we're just going to fold forward. This is a softer forward fold. So we're not going to worry so much about keeping the back straight. You don't want to just collapse down. You are still folding forward or reaching forward. But if there's a little rounding in the spine, it's okay. You can do different things if you want something to support here. You can stack some blocks. You can make a little structure like so, make it high. You can use the seat of a chair in front of you, as long as you can negotiate where the legs go. I think the legs would go here. If I was going to use a chair. Yeah, so the legs go inside, it's too close, really. I mean, it's up to you. You could try it. You just want to find something to support you to lean forward so you can round a little bit without worrying about stressing out the back. If we round forward without support, if there's any tendency toward a herniation or other disc problem like that, that's what puts too much pressure on the spine. So if you just have a little support, you can enjoy rounding forward a little bit, and it starts to move into a slightly different, more restorative feeling now. Just take a few breaths, folding forward like that. The prop should be at whatever height works for you to not stress the back. You should feel a nice opening in the back without any discomfort. And then take a few more breaths like that, thinking of breathing in to your back ribs. Think of each inhalation spreading the back a little bit more. And then slowly coming out of your Tarasana fold. And now we'll go onto the back once again. So have your props handy. You might just want your blanket or cushion or bolster if you have it. Nothing is absolutely crucial to have. But just lying down on your back. Knees bent, feet on the floor. Have the feet parallel to each other, legs parallel to each other, arms down alongside you, palms pressing down, and then lift up, pushing into the feet into your bridge position. Couple breaths there, and then lower back down. Walk the feet in any amount more that you can, getting them then pretty close. Maybe you can even touch the backs of the ankles with your fingers. And then lifting up one more time into your bridge. Just staying a couple breaths. Thinking of sending the knees forward. So I'm not going to emphasize really the back bend part of the bridge for today. I want to send the knees forward to emphasize opening up the quads and the hip flexors here. Think of this tissue spreading, spreading, spreading. And then lower back down. Hug the knees in towards the chest. Hold on to your right knee. Let the left leg come straight down. And then bring that right knee across towards the floor on the opposite side into your twist. So this knee might not touch the floor, or it might touch the floor. Opposite shoulder might come off the floor or might stay on the floor. You might kind of toggle back and forth between the two, touching the floor. You might find a place in between where you almost just sort of balance in your twist and let both the right knee and the left shoulder, no, the right knee and the right shoulder, it's not the opposite shoulder. It's on opposite sides, but it's the same shoulder. Let both fall down towards the floor equally. Take a couple more breaths and then slowly roll onto your back once again and hug both knees in. Hold on to your left knee and let the right leg come down to the floor and bring that knee across towards the floor on the opposite side. So again, the shoulder and the knee one might be touching the floor and the other's up. And then you might switch it. Go back and forth a few times. And then find a place in the middle where you can almost just balance on the right side of the body a little bit and let both the left shoulder and the left knee lower down towards the floor. And then slowly roll onto your back one last time, hugging both knees in. And then we'll just do happy baby, or if there's anything else you want to do for a moment before we finish up, take the opportunity now to do that. If you want to do happy baby, lift the soles of the feet up towards the ceiling, feet and knees apart. You can hold on to out the outer edges of your feet, or you can hold around the backs of the knees like so. If your tailbone starts to curl up off the floor, that's fine. But take a couple breaths, seeing if you can release it towards the floor at any amount. And we'll set up for Shavasana, any relaxation position of your choice. I'm going to have my bolster again, so I can show having a bolster or cushion underneath the legs. Almost like we started off with our constructive rest, only the legs should be extended a little more. So I'm scooching myself back away from the bolster a little bit more than I would be in a constructive rest position. So the legs are stretched out a little bit more. And then make sure your heels can be touching down on something. They shouldn't be hanging out in the air, because that's not a very reassuring place to be. You want the heels to touch something. So if it's the cushion is so high your heels are off the floor, then you might want to put your feet up on a chair. The lower legs can go up on a chair, or you might want to put the blanket under your feet so the floor is lifted up towards your heels a little bit. If you rather do your Shavasana with the feet flat, the legs flat out on the floor, that's always perfectly fine. I'll just give you a couple more moments to get set in your Shavasana. Find some place where the sun is not in my eyes. That's good. And then as you're settling into your Shavasana, start practicing centering breath a few times. Inhaling through the nose and exhaling through the mouth, very softly and quietly. Continue with your centering breath a few times. And then gradually transition back to just breathing in and out through the nose. Otherwise, keeping the breath as soft and quiet as possible. As you lie still, the breath might slow down even more because you're not moving. So let it slow down without getting locked into any particular kind of breath. Just trying to let the breath lead you into what it needs to do for this moment. So of course, Shavasana is one of those poses that we hold for quite a long time, and usually we don't mind holding it for a long time, unlike other poses where we might have that resistance. But that being said, there are times that Shavasana can be hard to hold as well. Especially if you've had a practice where things have happened and maybe some of those things have welled up that you weren't expecting to, or maybe were even dreading. So, as I was mentioning before, the body has a way of processing these things because we do this physical practice. Um, we don't always give the body credit for doing the work that it does in this processing of our emotions and our thoughts. So that's why Shavasana is such an important pose so that we can give the body that time. Sometimes it's very obvious what's happening because we can feel the results of our physical practice and we feel like, wow, I just stretched X, Y, and Z, or I just, used X, Y, and Z muscle I haven't used in so long. You can really feel it physically. Sometimes it's, more subtle, but it's still happening. So I'm going to give you a few more moments to really let that occur. And don't worry if it's not obvious to you what's happening. There is always something that's being worked through. You might not realize it until later. So I'll let you enjoy Shavasana a few more moments. And then when you hear my voice again, we'll just be closing our practice. Of course, at that point, if you prefer to stay in Shavasana even longer, you are more than welcome to. But in the meantime, try to release any other holding that you are aware of. At the same time, if it's not possible to completely release something, that's okay. Don't worry or be negative about it in your mind if you feel that something's just letting go of it would be too hard for whatever reason. It might be something that's going to take more time. So letting go as much as you can without forcing. Letting the floor support you, letting the earth support you, letting the breath be slow and soft. Release the eyes and the eye sockets. Release the jaw. Release the throat. Soften the face. Start to deepen and lengthen the breath once again. Slowly starting to find some movement again in your fingers and toes, by wiggling them around. And then bend your knees, stretch your arms back, overhead. You're just waking up in the morning, and then slowly roll over onto one side and come up to sit. Thank you so much for joining me online today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave me some comments if you would like. I hope everyone's staying safe out there. Namaste. See you next time.